Okay, so I'm going to show a few chain rule examples, starting from some simple to a little bit more complex ones. So remember that the chain rule goes as follows. So if I have a function, so chain rule is applied to functions that are composite functions. So if I have f of u of x, in other words, a composition of f and u on x, then I know that the derivative of f with respect to x is going to be the derivative of f with respect to u times the derivative of u with respect to x. Or I can think of it also as the derivative of u with respect to x times the derivative of f with respect to u. In other words, basically what I have to do is I have to first calculate the derivative of the first function, and then I have to multiply that by the derivative of the second function with respect to u. So let's consider the following function. Let's start with an easy one. F of x is equal to, let's say, 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 4, and maybe to the power of 3. And I want to find out what is the derivative of this function with respect to x. Before I do that, I have to analyze my function. I have to see what is the type of function I have. And if I look at this, I can see I have a composite function. First of all, in this function, this has to be evaluated. 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 4. This is a function on its own. And then all of that is put to the power of 3. So I have two functions nested, one nested inside of the other. 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 4 is nested inside of the function of something to the power of 3. So what I have to do is take a derivative of each step. So let me take a derivative of the first step, which is 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 4. So the derivative of that would be 20x cubed minus 6x plus 0. And then I have to multiply that. This is what the chain rule says. Multiply that with the next step. The next step is something to the power of 3. What's the derivative of something to the power of 3? It's 3 times that something to the power of 2. So in this particular case, I will have 3 times, well, what's the something? The something is 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 4. And then that goes to the power of 2. That's it. So this is the derivative of u with respect to x, where this is my u. And then this is the derivative of the outer function with respect to u. In other words, with respect to this polynomial. So this turns out to be 3 times 20x cubed minus 6x times 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 4 all squared. Some people would prefer to go the other way around. Some people would say they will start with the outer function first. So what happens in this function? There is something that is put to the power of 3. How do I take a derivative of something to the power of 3? It's going to be 3 times that something, which is 5x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 4, and then to the power of 2. But then I have to multiply that by the derivative of the something. What is the derivative of the something? It is 20x to the 3rd minus 6x. Okay, let's try a more complicated example. Let's say I have a function, let's say call it g of x is equal to 1 over, let's say, sine to the power of 3x. And I want to know what is the derivative of g with respect to x. Well, the problem here is that what do I have? I have a sine function, but it's not just sine function. It's sine function to the power of 3, and then I have 1 divided by sine function to the power of 3. So maybe what I should do first is rewrite this. So this is sine function to the power of negative 3x, or if you want to think of it this way, sine of x to the power of negative 3. Okay, which is probably a better way to write it in order to be able to visualize how to take a derivative of this function. So you can see that this function is again composed of two functions. One is sine x, and the other one is to the power of negative 3. So what is the derivative of something to the power of negative 3? The derivative of something to the power of negative 3 is negative 3 times something. What is my something? It's sine x to the power of negative 3 minus 1, which is negative 4. But the chain rule dictates that I have to now multiply this by the derivative of the something. The something was sine x. What is the derivative of sine x? That is cosine x. So the answer to this question, what is the derivative of g with respect to x, is negative 3 cos x in the numerator, and in the denominator is sine to the power of 4x, or you can think of it as sine of x to the power of 4. Let's try chain rule with more than one nested function. So let's consider, I don't know, let's look at h of x. H of x, let's look at maybe, let's do this. E to the square root of 2x squared minus 3. So I am interested in what is the derivative of h with respect to x. Well, I have a square root symbol in there, so the first thing that I should do, I should rewrite it in power form. So this would be e to the power of 2x squared minus 3 to the power of 1 over 2. So again, in this particular case, I have a nested function. Why? Because first I have e to something. Now this something is another something to the power of 1/2. In other words, first, if I were to evaluate this function, I have to calculate 2x squared minus 3. Then I'd have to take a square root of that, and then I have to put the result into the power of e. So let's go from outside in, like in the last example, as opposed to the first example. So I have e to the power of something. What is the derivative of e to the power of something? It is e to the power of something. It is the same thing. So this will be e to the power of 2x squared minus 3 to the 1/2. Remember, the derivative of e to the x is e to the x. Then I have to multiply it by the derivative of the something. Now what is the something? It is 2x squared minus 3 to the power 1 over 2, which means I have something to the power of 1 over 2. What is the derivative of something to the power of 1 over 2? It's going to be 1 over 2 times the something. What's my something? Now it's 2x squared minus 3. And then to the power of 1/2 minus 1, which is negative 1/2. And then I have to multiply that by the derivative of the something, which is derivative of 2x squared, which is 2x squared minus 3, which is 4x. So let me clean this up. So that means here I have a negative power, so that means I'm going to have a fraction. I'm going to have something at the top and something at the bottom. At the top I have 4x, and I have e to the square root of 2x squared minus 3. That is this guy. And then divided by 2 times 2x squared minus 3 to 1/2. Now this 4 and 2 cancel out. I'm left with 2 up there. 2x e to the square root of 2x squared minus 3 divided by square root of 2x squared minus 3. And that's it.